Who punched you?
Look, you helped me out a bunch. You helped 405 out a bunch.
The point steal, right?
Point steal's big, yeah. Well, he's doing an early great, but here come Kai from the third spot. But you stopped him in his tracks. That's got a good 25-point gap.
Oh, man. And when that light came on, boom, I was off to the button, and I fully expected him to be a car out.
Car started shaking halfway through the pass. His car ran perfect. My car didn't.
For 15 seasons, Street Outlaws put a group of Oklahoma drag racers on television and turned them into some of the most recognizable personalities in the history of automotive reality TV. The show launched in 2013 with almost no expectations and ended up becoming one of Discovery Channel's biggest franchises ever. But when the cameras finally stopped rolling and the television contracts ran out, what happened to the people who had built their identities around being street outlaws? Join us as we reveal the full story of where every major cast member is right now. The show that started everything and why it eventually had to end. Before getting into where everyone ended up, the ending of Street Outlaws itself deserves a moment, because the way it ended is part of every cast member's current story, whether they acknowledge it or not. Street Outlaws premiered on Discovery Channel on June 10, 2013, and ran for 15 seasons before the original show stopped filming. Along the way, it spawned No Prep Kings, Fastest in America, Street Outlaws Memphis, Street Outlaws New York, Street Outlaws Miami, a Canadian version, a video game, and a fan base that followed its cast members to racetracks across North America. At its peak, it was one of the highest-rated shows on Discovery, and the personalities it created became genuine celebrities in the automotive world in a way that no street racing program had managed before. The original show wrapped after 15 seasons, and the No Prep Kings spin-off, which ran under the name Speed Promotions Racing after rebranding, canceled the final races of its 2025 season, effectively ending the television era for the Street Outlaws franchise. With no active television deal in place and fewer production contracts being offered, the cast members who had built their professional identities around the show found themselves at a genuine crossroads, having to decide what racing without cameras looks like when the cameras are the reason most people know their name. The answer, as it turned out, was different for every single person. Some thrived, some struggled, while some had already been planning their exit for years. And some never got the chance to figure out what came next at all. But if the ending of the show set the stage for every story that followed, why did the man who was the face of the entire franchise for most of its run have the most complicated road out of all of them? The face of the franchise who had to figure out who he was without it. Justin Shearer was Street Outlaws before Street Outlaws knew what it was going to be. He was the one with the 1972 Pontiac Le Mans he called the Crow. The one who had grown up watching street races on Old Route 66 from the time he was 9 years old. The one who had been building cars and chasing speed in Oklahoma City since before there was any television camera to record it. When the show launched in 2013, Big Chief was its natural center, and for the first several seasons, the story of Street Outlaws was largely the story of Justin Shearer competing, struggling, winning, and doing it all in front of a camera that clearly made him more comfortable than it made most people. By the time the No Prep Kings spin-off was running at full speed, Big Chief's estimated net worth had reached $2 million, driven by his Street Outlaws salary of approximately $20,000 per episode, his Midwest Street Cars automotive business, sponsorships from brands including VP Racing Fuels, and a podcast called The Chief and Sean Show that he co-hosted with Sean Ellington. The business had grown around the television platform in the way that the smartest reality television participants always understand is necessary. Use the platform to build something that does not require the platform to survive. The personal story was considerably more complicated. Big Chief had married Alicia Shearer in 2006 after meeting her at a gas station in Oklahoma City when he was 18 years old and she came in to fill her car. They had 2 sons together, Corbin and Koval. The marriage lasted 11 years before the couple announced their divorce in November 2017. Big Chief addressed the divorce directly on the Chief and Sean Show podcast, saying that it was no secret that he and Alicia had been having trouble, that it had gone further than just having trouble, and that a divorce was actually happening. He was careful to emphasize that despite the divorce, both of them would continue doing right by their children. Alicia has maintained a very low profile since the separation, living in Mustang, Oklahoma, and keeping herself and her sons out of the media as much as possible. His girlfriend, Jackie Brush, a competitive drag racer who comes from a family of motorsport people and has been racing since the age of 8, has been part of the picture since around the time of the divorce. The two share a passion for racing that makes their relationship make sense to anyone who has watched either of them work. Jackie has appeared on Street Outlaws alongside Big Chief, and the relationship has been publicly visible without either of them making it the primary story they tell about their lives. When rumors circulated that Big Chief had been removed from the No Prep Kings cast, he addressed them directly on social media, telling fans he was not going anywhere and that the 405 was home. He has been expanding his brand with Chromod-inspired merchandise, growing his YouTube presence through Midwest Street Cars, and competing in the new NHRA Wright Trailers Outlaw Street Series in 2026, bringing the Street Outlaws brand to sanctioned track events for the first time in a format that gives the racing proper safety infrastructure. Big Chief rebuilt his personal life and his professional brand after the show without making a public spectacle of either process, which is harder than it sounds when millions of people are watching and waiting. But if Big Chief's story is about rebuilding, what about the man who was always quietly the most dangerous racer in the entire 405 crew? And what has he been doing since the cameras stopped rolling? Sean "Murder Nova" Ellington, the man who won everything after the cameras left. If Big Chief is the man who defined what Street Outlaws was, Sean Ellington is the man who proved that Street Outlaws was only the beginning of what he could do. Murder Nova was always one of the show's most compelling figures, a quiet, focused man whose black 1969 Chevy Nova carried the same energy that its name suggested: dark, fast, and not interested in making friends before the race. On screen, he was the understated counterpart to the louder personalities around him. Off-screen, and after the television era ended, he became something closer to unstoppable. Sean Ellington was born on November 15, 1977, in Merced, California, and moved to Sayre, Oklahoma in 1982, where his father Richard owned an auto body shop that became the classroom in which everything Ellington knows about cars was first learned. Growing up sweeping floors and watching his father work, he developed the mechanical instincts and the patience that competitive drag racing demands at the highest levels. The Murder Nova, his iconic 1969 Chevy Nova with a twin turbocharged small block Chevy engine capable of pushing around 3,400 horsepower, became not just his race car, but his identity, so completely associated with the man that his fan base refers to him by the car's name more reliably than by his own. During the Street Outlaws years, Ellington won the title of King of the Street and held it for 3 years. He credited his crew chief, Daniel Parker, known as Phantom, with introducing a more data-driven, scientific approach to preparation that changed how they approached every race. The shift from instinct-based racing to calculated record-keeping precision produced the NPK Championship in 2024, confirming that the method worked. After the Street Outlaws television era ended, Ellington immediately jumped into pro mod racing, debuting in the Drag Illustrated Winter Series in a twin-turbo 1969 Camaro called Blue, owned by Keith Haney, and in April 2025, he notched his first Pro Mod event win at Extreme Raceway Park in Ferris, Texas. He also co-founded the Outlaw Syndicate Small Tire Series with Ryan Martin in 2026, a new racing series designed to keep the Street Outlaws community together. His personal life has remained stable throughout all of it. He and his wife, Erin, married in December 2005, celebrated 20 years of marriage in 2025, with Sean regularly describing her as his best friend and strongest supporter. Murder Nova is currently, by most meaningful measures, the most professionally successful person who appeared on Street Outlaws. But if Ellington represents the peak of what post-show success looks like, what about the man who actually held the most championships inside the No Prep Kings format and is still breaking records nobody else has broken? Ryan Martin, the three-time NPK champion who became the new standard. Ryan Martin came to Street Outlaws later than some of the original cast, but his impact on the franchise was immediate and lasting. He was faster, more consistent, and more strategically disciplined than almost anyone he raced against, and the No Prep King series gave his specific skill set the perfect environment to demonstrate all of that. Ryan Martin won the No Prep Kings Championship in 2019, 2021, and 2022, making him a three-time champion and the benchmark against which every other competitor in the series measured their own progress. 3 championships across 4 seasons is not a record that happens by accident. It is the result of mechanical preparation and competitive focus that makes other racers quietly reassess their programs when they see it up close. After the television era ended, Martin did not slow down. He began hosting his own small tire racing events in the winter of 2025, running 5 events that drew strong attendance and confirmed there was a live audience for Street Outlaws personalities without a television production attached. He recently became the first driver to record a 3-second pass on 28 times 10.5 slicks, running a 3.949 at 198.73 miles per hour, a milestone in the true 10.5 class that immediately established him as one of the leading figures in small tire racing post-Street Outlaws. He co-founded the Outlaw Syndicate Small Tire Series with Ellington in 2026 and is competing in the new NHRA Wright Trailers Outlaw Street Series. The 3-time champion, who built his reputation on television, is proving that the reputation was earned rather than manufactured by a production team. Ryan Martin and Murder Nova are clearly the 2 most dominant post-show success stories in the franchise. But what about the duo who was never expected to be fan favorites at all, and who somehow became the most beloved personalities in the entire cast anyway? Farmtruck and AZN, the duo that turned a silly premise into a legitimate brand. Of all the personalities that Street Outlaws produced, Sean Farmtruck Whitley and Jeff AZN Bonnet were probably the least expected to become long-term fan favorites. A pickup truck disguised as a farm vehicle competing against purpose-built race cars was the kind of premise that should have been a one-season gimmick. Instead, Farmtruck and AZN became 2 of the most beloved figures in the show's entire run. Their chemistry and genuine enthusiasm for the absurdity of what they were doing translating into a connection with the audience that the more serious racers sometimes struggled to generate. They leveraged that connection into a spin-off called Farmtruck and AZN, Detoured, and into a business relationship with Street Outlaws that kept them employed and visible long after other cast members had cycled in and out. When the drag-illustrated profile of original Street Outlaws cast members was published in September 2025, Farmtruck and AZN were among the 4 original stars present at the inaugural 405 shootout at Mocon Dragway in Asbury, Missouri. Still racing, still together, still doing the thing that made people love them in the first place. The farming-themed truck is still running. The duo is still running. Some combinations simply work too well to stop. Farmtruck and AZN proved that you do not have to be the fastest car on the list to build the most loyal following in the room. But what about the original 405 crew members who were part of the foundation the show was built on? And what are they doing now that the foundation no longer has a television contract attached to it? The original crew and what they are doing now. James "Doc" Love was one of the original faces of the 405 crew and one of the racers whose technical knowledge and competitive instincts made him a genuine threat on the list throughout the show's run. He was also among the cast members at the MoCon 405 shootout in May 2025, continuing to race in events that kept the original Street Outlaws community connected even without an active television deal. His presence at grassroots events reflects the reality that most of these men were racing before the cameras arrived and have continued racing since the cameras left, because the racing was never primarily about the television. Dave Comstock, known as Daddy Dave, was the man who eventually took the King of the Street title from Murder Nova and held it through some of the most competitive periods in the show's history. The Memphis native who became a fixture of the Oklahoma City racing scene remained active in the independent racing world after the television years ended, competing in events that did not require a Discovery Channel production budget to organize. Joe Dominator Woods was another presence at the May 2025 MoCon event, and his reflection on what the show had been in its early days captured something important about how the original cast thinks about what they built. In the Drag Illustrated oral history, Woods said that he never truly thought the show was going to be as big a deal as it became, that they were just doing some silly, stupid teenage stuff in their adulthood, and that the moment he realized something massive had happened was at Thunder Valley's Outlaw Armageddon, where the stands were completely packed and his brother and sister-in-law were standing on top of the bathroom just to see the races. Jerry Monza Johnston, the fifth original cast member documented at the MoCon event in 2025, completed the picture of a group of men who had started racing for nothing but pride on an Oklahoma City street and found themselves, 15 seasons later, still racing, still together, and still navigating the question of what their world looks like when the production companies are no longer paying for the hotels. The original crew is still out there, still showing up, still competing at the grassroots level where Street Outlaws was born. But does what the surviving cast members are building together make the future of this community look more hopeful or more fragile than it did at the peak of the television years? What comes after Street Outlaws? The end of the Street Outlaws television era has not meant the end of the community. If anything, it has forced the people at the center of that community to think more creatively about how to sustain what they built without a network writing the checks and setting the schedule. The NHRA Right Trailers Outlaw Street Series, announced for 2026, will feature Sean Ellington, Ryan Martin, and Scott Taylor competing on sanctioned NHRA tracks in a format that brings the Street Outlaws brand to proper racing facilities with crash walls, catch fencing, and safety crews operating at professional standards. This partnership between the NHRA and the Street Outlaws world is the most significant structural development in the post-television era, because it gives the racers a legitimate competitive platform that does not require closing a public road in the middle of the night and hoping the safety precautions are sufficient. The Outlaw Syndicate Small Tire Series, co-founded by Martin and Ellington, is the grassroots version of the same instinct. Keep the racing going, keep the community together, keep the fans involved. Both men said publicly that they get bored without racing, that the decades of work and commitment to the Street Outlaws world made sitting still feel unnatural, and that the solution to the television era ending was to build the next thing rather than mourn the last one. Big Chief is doing the same thing from a different angle, expanding his merchandise line, growing his YouTube presence, and competing in the new NHRA series. Farmtruck and AZN are still out there with the truck. Doc, Daddy Dave, Dominator, and Monza are still racing at events that the television cameras are not necessarily covering, but the fans are still attending. Street Outlaws ran for 15 seasons and built something that did not require the television cameras to exist, with the people who built it still out there chasing the specific kind of speed that first pulled them to an Oklahoma City street years before anyone offered to put it on television. Communities do not disappear when the cameras leave. The 405 is proof of that. Do you think the NHRA partnership and the Outlaw Syndicate series can give Street Outlaws fans the same thing the original show gave them? Or is some of that energy impossible to recreate without the cameras? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.